This week I am transforming one of the rooms in my house, taking it from carpet to something that looks incredibly like hardwood, but it's actually called LVP, which stands for Luxury Vinyl Plank. LVP is probably the best DIY option out there. You don't need to mess around with adhesives or buy any special tools. Aside from being gorgeous and coming in a multitude of different colors, it is incredibly tough. It's also waterproof and as close as you can get to pet proof. You can also cut it with any standard woodworking tools, and even a beginner can get it right the first time. I went with the Pinnacle line by Happy Feet. It only took a single day, so if a flooring project is on your to-do list, then this is how I did mine. So as you can see, I've already removed the baseboard. If you're gonna be doing a flooring job, such as like removing the carpet or even a hardwood floor, my recommendation is to leave the flooring in place, remove the baseboard, and paint your room. It's a ready-made drop cloth to protect the floor. So what I did in order to save time is go ahead and cut in and then remove the baseboard. Now what I'm going to do is fill in all of the holes and then finish painting this wall by rolling it. If you're ever filling in holes, my number one putty that I keep on hand is this DAP Dry Dex. I really like it because it starts off as pink and then goes over to white. They call it a dry time indicator, where you don't have to time it, you just watch the color and then know whenever it's time to move on. If you're gonna be painting a room, I love this Wagner Easy Roller. As you can see, there's a clear tube in the center, and this actually sucks up paint utilizing this plunger. And then as you're rolling it, you just push the paint up and then it goes to the nap roller. It's crazy how much time this takes off painting an entire room by not having to stop and reload your brush. All right, now let's rip up some carpet. When ripping up carpet, carpet is surprisingly heavy, and so what I like to use is a box blade to cut the carpet into strips to make it more manageable to move out by myself. Know that they do make like hook blades. I've just never found that they're needed, and I find them more cumbersome. I start by scoring the carpet as deep as possible to also cut the under padding. I'm not too concerned with how straight my line is, just that it goes across the whole room so that I can roll it up and remove it easily. I then repeat for the pad, and I'm lucky because the installers only used adhesive around the perimeter to help keep it in place. I'll have to scrape the floor clean before installing my new surface, so this saves me some prep time. I repeat for the other side of the room, and then I'm on to removing the carpet tack strips. A mallet and crowbar pull them up easily, and I make sure I'm careful to avoid the tacks when I'm cleaning up pieces. After that, I scrape the floor to remove any adhesive or debris that I may have missed. So a quick tip if you're doing flooring, I went through and removed the tack strips, and as I was scraping the residue of the pad, I found the nails that I missed before. You wanna make sure that you have a perfectly flat floor before sealing it and moving to the next step. So I just grab a pry bar and just pop it right up. It's important to completely sweep and vacuum the floor so that the flooring has a clean, smooth foundation. Next, I'm going to prep the floor with Happy Feet's Moisture Vapor Barrier Primer. It goes on with the roller and will dry in about an hour. It's important to do this because moisture from the ground is constantly rising up through concrete, which can lead to mold and mildew under something impermeable like LVP. But this primer will block out moisture and prevent mold. Once everything was fully dry, I checked the layout of the flooring. I wanted to see what my very last strip would end up being because I want to avoid a very narrow plank there. So I definitely recommend doing this, and if your last board is going to be way too thin and narrow, then you can cut the first row of planks to be a little bit more narrow so that it balances out on both sides of the room. Mine turned out to be about 4 inches and I was fine with that. So I started the room with a full width plank. I can already see that I'm going to love this floor. I don't think the camera can capture just how realistic the grain pattern and color variation is. The wood grain embossing also makes it slip resistant. My first corner has some door trim that extends lower than my new floor height. So I'm going to take a piece of scrap and cut the trim to the new height with a multi-tool. After that, I clear out any debris and make sure it fits underneath in all directions. I'm picking the hardest corner first because the last thing that I want to do is wait until the very end and then not have any wiggle room. By picking the most difficult corner first, I'm going to have all the room open to work with it. The flooring does need expansion room. They call it an expansion gap. So I have some 1/4 inch spacers here. It's just scrap wood out of my shop, and it needs it around the entire perimeter. So I'm going to take my first board, making sure that the tongue that the next board is going to interlock into is facing out. And don't worry about the gap because the trim will cover it. And then for this, also don't worry about that because the transition strip will cover 2 inches. So that 1 inch gap is just fine. So setting the first row is super important because it's gonna set the tone for the rest of the room. You wanna make sure that it's nice and square. You wanna make sure that you have the expansion gap. When measuring for the very end piece, I'm just gonna remember that I need a 1/4 inch gap over there. I'm gonna take off a 1/4 inch. So I'm gonna cut this one at 34. That thing is so awesome. This tool is about $140, but I invested into it for this project because I wanted to be able to cut them inside without having sawdust. The core of this flooring looks kind of like MDF, but it's actually a mineral-based material that's incredibly hard and dent resistant. It's also super dense, which makes it quiet and feel solid under your feet. Whenever you're cutting, I needed to make sure to have this lock because it has to interlock over here, but then this is at a 90, so I make sure to cut on this side because that's the side that's gonna go up against the wall. Once the plank sits in, I lock it in place by gently tapping the joint with the rubber mallet from the connecting side to the open side. You don't have to worry about marring the floor with the mallet. I did some quick experiments and couldn't dent this stuff at all. I could scratch it, but only slightly and with a lot of muscle. And nothing I tried left a permanent stain. The surface of LVP is called the wear layer, and on other brands it's typically between 6 and 12 mil. But on Pinnacle by Happy Feet, it is 28 mil. What I need to do for this board, the way that these interlocked is you have to start with it up and then you tilt it down into place. The reason why it gets tricky around this door jamb is because I need this to interlock on both the one inside the closet and the one outside of the main room, but I can't tilt it up. So what I'm gonna do is move this whole row forward, interlock this one, and then slide it all into place. It's important to get a feel for the fully locked in planks. When setting them in, you want to make sure that they are completely flush and connected all the way. If you're even a little off, they may not sit completely flat. Something that is very helpful is to have a piece of scrap flooring that can be used to tap pieces into place. By using my mallet on the inserted scrap, I can move planks into place while protecting their click and lock edges. It comes in very handy when you need to maneuver around tight spaces like a doorway. For this, I laid out my planks and took a measurement for the material I need to remove with my multi-tool. Then I set it and tapped it into its final position with the help of my scrap. So whenever you get to the end, this measurement with the expansion gap, let's call it 8 inches on this one, ended up cutting, making sure that I'm cutting off the right side for it to still interlock into this piece. Now the rest of this board that I took that from is actually going to start up the next row. And this creates a nice staggering of joints that you don't really have to think about. Once I finish the doorway, things really speed up quite a bit as each run only needs a few cuts and the rest of the room fills in quickly. The last row does require a little extra attention though. So from this side to that side, it's 4 3/8, 4 5/8. And so what I'm gonna do is rip all of these the same and then hide the gap with the expansion gap since we need it anyways. So again, it's really great to keep a piece of molding around with you so that you can see exactly how much you can get away with. A couple quick cuts on the table saw and we're ready for the final install. Okay, last piece. And that's floor. Happy feet. Not bad for a day's worth of work. I mean, I completely 180'd this room by simply painting the walls and laying down new flooring. It's a great combo to do at the same time. At this point, I just had to put back on the baseboards and then move in all of my items. If you have concerns about indoor air quality, know that Pinnacle is FloorScore certified to meet the highest standards. And to see how great this flooring looks, you really have to see it in person. I'll leave a link to local showrooms in the description. In one of my other rooms, I changed from carpet to hardwood flooring, and with pets, I just don't think that it's the best decision. So if you have a flooring project, I would absolutely consider this LVP, especially this Pinnacle line that has that 28 mil wear layer. I hope that you were inspired to tackle your own flooring project off this video, and I will see you on whatever project I'm tackling next.